Welcome, fanboys and girls, to the very first ever Creepy Uncle Mike's Toy Chest. What we'll be doing with these videos is going through and reviewing different figures that come out over the next few years, and kind of just taking a look at how well the articulation is, what kind of accessories they're coming out with. I'm going to try to have at least a couple new videos each month, so that way we can make sure we're reviewing as many different figures, both at the higher end prices and also down at the retail values as well, with some of like the lower end figures like the Marvel Legends, DC Collectibles, which are still great figures. But today we are going to be talking about the Mezco 112 Collective Green Arrow. I've been waiting for this figure for a very, very long time. When they announced this, I instantly made sure to pre-order it because I did not want to wait. Right now, we're going to take a look at the box. First, just because, as simplistic as they are, they do great work with these boxes. The front of it is just got the Green Arrow logo. It's a very nice shade of green. It definitely fits the Emerald Archer very well. Down here on the side, we have another Green Arrow logo. On the back here, we do have just some basic poses that they have done with him. You've got a couple even where they've got him in like the woods or on a city rooftop. Just a great kind of example of the different poses you can put him in. And then on the final side here, we have once again the logo for Green Arrow. And then on the top, we have the 112 Collective logo. And on the bottom, you just have the basic information and the barcode and choking hazard warnings. Next, we're going to take out the box out of the slipcover here, where we are going to get to just a logo with just Green Arrow written across the front of the box. And it does have this nice open window display, which is great if you're an in-box collector. I am not. I do fully intend on taking him out to have him on display on my shelf. It does have this rather fantastic artwork here on the inside of the box as well. But let's get started and take a look at the figure itself. Doo-doo! Alright, and here he is out of the box. As you can see, a lot of detail. Just from a quick glance, you can see everything with the different markings on his shin guards and his forearms, and just the detail in his vest and his hood. Before we get too far into the articulation of the figure, there's one thing I do really want to get into. My favorite part of this figure, which was also one of my big concerns, is the hood. So they put the wires in the hood so that way you can pose it, and it makes it easier. So if you need to have it laying down, it will stay down, and also if you want to have it up, you can kind of form it to whatever pose you want. Because when they first started showing off pictures of this figure, my biggest worry was just how he'd look with the hood up. I was really concerned that it was going to be a situation where I'd have him primarily posed with the hood down, just because it would look kind of weird, because it would just kind of sit there and not fit very well on his head. But that's not the case at all. This looks fantastic, and you have complete control of how the hood looks in which direction that you have him facing. But what we're going to do is we're going to get into the articulation of Green Arrow here. We are going to start with the arms. As you can see, he has just kind of the basic shoulder joint that's kind of standard in most figures nowadays. Has full 360-degree rotation. He does have the bicep pivot, so that way you can get full rotation there. He does have the double jointed elbows. That's about as far as they will bend forward. And then he does also have the ball joint, as all the other Mezco figures do, for the wrist. That's about as far forward as it will go, and about as far back as it will go. If you can even turn it and rotate a little bit, so you can get a little more of an angle there. for different poses. Let's move on to the legs here. So if we move for the hip joint, it's about as far as forward as he can extend his leg. Not terrible at all. It's pretty on par with what most figures nowadays have. As far as going backwards though, we don't have a lot. It kind of just stops there, maybe a hair past where the hip joint would be connected. I mean, it doesn't really hinder the posing of the figure too much. You still get a lot of the side angle as well. As you can see, you can almost fully extend it to the side. Moving on to the knee, he does have double jointed knees, so you get quite a bit of movement there and a lot more flexibility than you do with the hip joints, which is great. This is the one big flaw with this, the articulation on this figure, is the ankle pivots. There's not a lot there. You can kind of turn his ankle side to side, but there's not much as far as up and down or even tilting the axis at all, which you can still pose him for the most part. It does make some poses a little more difficult to get him to stand on his own, but for the most part, it's still pretty easy to get him up. Doo-doo! Alright, next we're going to take a look at some of the accessories for this figure. So he did come with a number of arrows, his bow of course, and a number of hands. So one thing I do want to go over first is the bow. So the bow that they give you, the string on it, was just like a piece of twine, which when I tried to pose him like in just like some of the standard poses they advertised, it was very difficult to do, and the string actually at one point came undone. So rather than continue to fiddle with it, I actually went and I grabbed my CW Arrow figure from DC Collectibles. He sacrificed the elastic string that came with his bow so that the Mezco 112 could finally have a bow that had proper string, which makes it a lot easier to pose. Next we're going to get into some of the hands for this figure. So right now he has the standard fists on. That's what he comes with out of the box. When you get to the first pair here, first pair of hands are I call them the drawstring hands. They are pretty simple to kind of see, just a couple fingers up so that way he can hold on to the arrows and the drawstring, and so that way you can get him into the most recognizable green arrow poses. The next pair of hands are, I've primarily used them, and I've seen them all over the internet, primarily used for posing as if he let go of the arrow to release it to fire it. They're just kind of open palmed hands with the fingers all extended out. You can also probably use it if you want to have him like reaching for a ledge or something like that as well. The second to last pair we have here are the hands used to hold his bow. You do have both right and left for these, just like you do for the drawstring. So if you decide you'd rather your green arrow be a lefty versus a righty, you have that option. And then the last two hands are both right hands. We have one hand here, which just has a tiny little slot there that you can kind of see. What that is for is he does come with a knife that I'll be showing you here shortly. And that's just so that way he has a way of holding that knife. And then the next hand is also a right hand, and it's just it's almost like that politician pose where he's got his thumb extended up and his index finger kind of out a little bit. I've been primarily using this to, like, if I had to have him posed where he's pulling his hood off. You could always do May or Ollie and have him doing the whole politician thumbs up at the podium. There are a whole lot of other uses I can think of for that particular hand. Doo-doo! Next up we're going to show off some of the arrows. We're going to start with the bundle of arrows that you get that slide into the quiver. It has this nice little block to anchor them down. The only downside is because it has that block, it does make it very difficult to fit any of the other arrows in the quiver if you're wanting to maybe have it so he has a couple of specialty ones in there. Not that that's really relevant, but some people like that. Next we have just the standard normal steel tip arrow. Kind of just normal what you'd see green arrow using, nothing too special. And after that we have what is my personal favorite, which is more of the explosive specialty type arrows, where it just has that extra piece on it to kind of do a little extra damage. This next arrow is actually a really cool one that I am surprised and glad they include. It is the kryptonite arrow. So if you end up buying either of the 3 Mezco Supermen that are either out or on their way out, you can kind of have them face off. I actually might have to pick up the Red Sun Superman just so I can have an evil Superman versus Green Arrow on my shelf. The next arrow we have is going to be the grappling hook arrow, which is really nicely done. It has quite a bit of detail on it. Let's see if we can get a little bit closer here. You can definitely see it has all the ridges, so that way they put a lot of work into this sculpt. The only downside to this arrow is that I wish they would have added a piece of string to it, kind of like they did with the Mezco 112 Dark Knight Returns Batman grappling hook. I may add one later on, but it would still have been nice just to have that feature so it could have a attachment to hook it to the arrow and then also hook it to the bow. But I guess that's a lot of extra work that probably wasn't necessary, so I don't blame them for not including it. And then the final set of arrows is you get the 3 steel tip arrows combined, which is really cool in theory. However, because of the way that they have them, and I'm going to bring them a little closer so you can see, they do not lay flat. So getting them to pose on the bow correctly is very difficult to do. If you just kind of leave it laying there, it looks okay, but if you want to do any other poses with it, it's a little more complicated to get that set up without them falling, and you do have to use one of the grappling hands to hold those, because that's the only way you're going to be able to fit all 3 of the arrows in between his fingers so he can hold them in place. Next up we have this little knife accessory, which is it's really well detailed. Bring it a little closer so you can see here. And it's got the kind of little finger marks there so you can hold it. It's got a little bit of detail there on the knife itself. It looks really cool. I guess it's a great accessory for if your Green Arrow figure's ever caught without his bow or arrows. So I guess they thought ahead there. And the last thing this figure came with is the circle stand with the crane arm, which is great if you want to do any sort of aerial poses or anything. It does also come with a peg, so that way you can have him standing on it as well. It also does have a great looking Green Arrow logo there on the stand itself, so if you just want them standing on it on your shelf, so that way you can have them all nice and neat, kind of spread out. It's definitely a great stand to have for that. Alright, and the last thing I'd like to do here is just a quick size comparison. First we've got him next to the Mezco 112 Dark Knight Returns Batman. As you can see, Batman is just a little bit taller, nothing too drastic, which is kind of nice, because that way it's easier to match him up at least with the same series pretty well. Next to that we've got On the other side here, the Marvel Legends X-Men series Deadpool, which once again he's pretty on point with. I think Deadpool might be just a hair taller, but nothing overly excessive, which is nice. And finally, we have the DC Collectibles Designer Series Batman. He is a little bit taller than the rest of the figures here, but I just blame that on the fact that he's Batman. Overall, I am very happy with the scale that they've got for this Green Arrow figure. He does blend in nice with all the other 1/12 scale figures out, as far as both on DC and Marvel's end, and I definitely can't wait to see what they do next. But that's going to wrap it up here for Creepy Uncle Mike's Toy Chest Episode 1. Remember, please make sure to subscribe. We have tons of content here on our Fanboy Fight Club channel, everything from our podcast, different things that we've streamed with our gaming, different reacts to Comic-Con and the E3 and all the other big events, and we definitely have a lot more to come. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter at FBFC Podcast, or also go and like us on Facebook, Fanboy Fight Club. And as always, the only rule of Fanboy Fight Club is that you must talk about the Fanboy Fight Club. See you guys next time.